Hi there, welcome to That Board Game Show. My name is James Wood, and today I'm going to show you Viticulture Essential Edition, including the Tuscany Essential Edition Expansion. I'm going to show you how Viticulture plays by playing out a few rounds of the solo mode. And I'll point out the differences between the basic core edition of Viticulture and the Tuscany expansion. At the start of the game, each player is dealt these two Mama and Papa cards, which give us our initial starting resources. So the Mama card over here will show us that we get 2 standard workers, 2 wine order cards from this deck over here. So I'll take those 2 and I'll put them next to me over here. And 1 summer visitor card, which I'll put over there as well. I'll explain what all these cards are, the differences and how they work as we play. My Papa card over here gives me 5 lira to start the game with, 1 grande worker, which as you can see is a little bit different from all the other workers you can use. Again, I'll explain how that's unique as I play. And then the Papa card gives you a choice between either gaining 1 additional point or 2 additional lira at the start of the game. In this case, I have chosen to take the 2 additional lira because money is quite scarce in the first few rounds of the game and it can really help you to jumpstart your game. In case it's not clear already, Viticulture is a worker placement game. That means we're going to be taking our workers and placing them in these various action spaces on the board. Each time we place a worker, we will do the corresponding action, and then play will proceed to the next player. In the solo mode, naturally that does not happen. As you can see here as well, we start the game with these 3 workers, but we have all these additional components off to the side. These will be unlocked as we play. So for a start, let me point out a couple of the unique elements introduced by the Tuscany expansion. The first thing you may notice is this slightly larger board. The standard Viticulture board is a little bit smaller, and it doesn't have this large area over here, which introduces a small area control game that you can play by placing these little star tokens on the map and gaining an immediate benefit and possible points at the end of the game if you have majority of your stars in each of those zones. The other element introduced by the expansion are these 2 additional special workers. There's in fact a whole deck of these cards, and at the beginning of each game you're going to pick 2 of them. And you'll see those correspond to your personal colored workers of the same type. So when you train a worker as one of your actions, you can train a special worker by paying 1 additional lira. And lastly, before I start the first round, the solo mode is driven by this deck of automa cards, which represent a simulated artificial player who will block off worker placement spots. At the beginning of each season, which is how the game is divided into different rounds, we will flip over one of these automa cards, and wherever it tells us to place workers, we'll place these neutral colored pawns to block off those worker placement spots, thereby limiting my options as a solo player and simulating playing with someone else. So with that all said, let's dive in with the first round. And to work out what I'm going to do in the first round, I'm going to look at these cards that I got at the start of the game, which are 2 wine orders and a summer visitor card. So this summer visitor card is the horticulturalist, which allows me to plant any 1 vine, even if you don't have the required structures, or uproot and discard 2 vines to gain 3 points. That will make more sense as I play, but basically, in order to plant vines in your fields, you have to have specific structures for specific types of vines. This card allows you to negate that rule. And then these two cards simply are giving me a target to work towards. So this is a wine order for a level 6 red wine, which I will get by planting vines in my field that give me red grapes, harvesting those red grapes from my field into my crush pad over here, and then converting those grapes into wine, which I will then store in my cellars. I will then need to age that wine until it is at level 6, at which point I can then fill that order. So that's a lot of information to get us started with. Let me take my first action and let's figure out how to actually put all of that into practice. And the first thing we do in a game of Viticulture is each player will take their rooster token and choose their wake-up order for that year. In the solo mode, there's a little bit of a difference here. You'll see that there are these glass beads on each space. Those are the round trackers. So in the solo mode, I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds in which to score at least 25 points. Because the automa starts the game on 25. So my goal in the solo game is to score 26 points or more. So at the beginning of each round, I will take my rooster and I will place it on one of these spaces, removing one of these glass beads, which has two effects. One, it reminds me that that is now one round less. And two, it now means I cannot place my rooster in that same space again for the remainder of the game. So each space here I can only choose once in the solo game, whereas in a multiplayer game, you can choose the same location each year on the wake-up chart. So I think the first place I'm going to go to get the game started is I'm going to take this number 3 wake-up position, and I suppose I should explain what the relevance of the wake-up chart is with a multiplayer game as well. The wake-up chart determines the player order. So this game doesn't typically play out just in a normal clockwise around the table method. Your play order will be determined by the order in which you choose to wake up on this chart. And you will see that the earlier you wake up, the less bonuses you get. But you get first place, which means you get first claim on each of the worker placement spaces. But the lower down you go, the more bonuses you get to compensate for waking up later and getting less actions. So taking this number 3 spot, and I'll take this glass bead that was there, and I place it next to my board. That is a little bonus token that I can use in a special way for the solo mode. And I'll explain how that's helpful as I use it. So that was the first thing we do. And now we start the spring season. And the first thing we do in spring, before I get to take any actions, is flip over the first automa card off the top of the deck, and you will see that the actions are color-coded. So at the moment, we are in the spring phase, as denoted by the wake-up chart over here, which means we look at the green label on the automa card. If we were in summer, we would look at the yellow labels. And these tell us where to block off worker placement spots with the automa's workers. So we will now take a automa worker and place it on the give a tour action space, effectively blocking me from taking that action. And now I take a turn as if it's a normal multiplayer game. And I can take one of my workers and I can place them anywhere in these spring action spaces. You will see that each action area has 3 spaces available. And the number of spaces available is determined by the number of players. So in a solo or 2-player game, only this first action space is available, meaning only one player each round will be able to go to that action space. In a 3-player game, the first 2 action spaces are available, and in a 4-player game, all 3 are available. However, I mentioned this larger grande worker earlier. This grande worker allows you to negate that rule. So you can take your grande worker and you can place it in an action space that has already been occupied by another player. You do not get any bonuses that you may have got by going there with a normal worker, but it still allows you to take that action, which can be quite critical at certain points in the game. For right now though, it's a bit too soon to be using my grande worker, so I'm going to take one of my normal workers, and I'm going to place them on this draw cards action. So I'll place it in the first action space available, which gives me a bonus draw. So by default, I will draw one vine card from the vine deck over here. By being the first player to come here, I place it on the bonus action and I get to draw 2 vine cards. I'll take those, 1, 2, and I'll add those into my hand. But first, let's have a look at them. So I can see here that these will give me a level 2 white vine or a level 1 red and white vine. And this little icon in the corner here is the structure that is required for you to have built in your vineyard before you can plant that vine. And remember, my horticulturalist action allows you to plant one vine without having the prerequisite structure. So that could come in quite handy. And let's put these over here, and we can see that these both give us white grapes. And this one wine order over here, let's just display these out over here so they're all visible. This one wine order over here requires a level 4 and a level 3 white grape. So if I could get both of these planted and harvested, I can start working towards this order pretty quickly. So that was my first action in spring. I can continue to take actions in spring, or I can choose to pass into summer. So as you can see, I only have 2 workers remaining. And there are all these action spots still available to take. So while there may still be some good actions to take in the spring section, sometimes you want to skip ahead to the next season, even if there's still things you want to do here, because of your limited supply of workers. Because there may be actions in these later seasons that you want to do even more. One of the ways to mitigate this problem is to come over here in winter to pay 4 lira and train an additional worker, thereby giving you 4 workers to use instead of just 3. And you can do that an additional 5 times because you have 5 additional worker pawns just hanging out here on the sidelines waiting to be hired. So, with that said, I think what I'm going to do is pass on any further spring actions and move my rooster over into summer. And as I do so, you will see that it covers up this green plus icon, which means I draw a green vine card and add that to my supply, which is another white grape. But it requires 2 structures. So now that I have passed into summer and taken my bonus, we will flip over the next automa card. And we will block off these 2 action spaces in summer, which are play a visitor card, meaning I will not be able to play my horticulturalist. As you can see, it's a yellow card matching the yellow space over there. So that would be blocking me from playing this card, which I really want to do because I've got this vine over here, which wants me to have 2 structures. So if I can play this horticulturalist, I can save having to pay for those 2 structures first. But now that space has been blocked off. The other space that has been blocked off is this trade 1-for-1 space over here. You may notice on this card that it has 2 lines of text. One of them says trade 1-for-1, and one of them says sell at least 1 grape. The reason there's 2 there, that's because this automa deck works in the Viticulture Essential Edition standard box. But with the Tuscany expansion, some of the worker placement spaces are additional, and some have been slightly modified. So that's why there's this little dotted line. So if you're playing with just the normal Essential Edition without the expansion, you would do the top space. With the expansion, you will do the bottom space. And any spaces with this little T in the corner here are exclusive to only the expansion. So if you were playing the normal one and you flipped over this card, you would simply ignore that. So now I have some decisions to make. I could use my grande worker to come over here and play this horticulturalist in spite of there being a worker there already. But then I stand the risk of maybe not being able to train a worker later on, because if that space gets blocked off, that's my only opportunity to train a worker. So, let's see, perhaps I should have, during summer, spent an action to build one structure, and at least give myself the option to build these to plant these vines. That probably would have been smart, but c'est la vie, we live and learn, don't we? So I think considering that this action space has been blocked off, and the only way for me to do it would be with my grande worker, which might prevent me from taking actions I need to later on, I'm going to skip out completely on any summer actions and skip straight on into fall, or autumn as I would call it. And when doing so, I will draw a second summer visitor card. So let's see what that is. I get a buyer. I can pay 2 lira to place 1 grape on your crush pad or discard 1 grape to gain 2 lira. Again, most of these will make more sense as we play and start getting some stuff. As you can see, my vineyard is rather empty at the moment. So we need to change that, don't we? And we now flip over the automa card for fall and reveal it, and it so happens that the automa does no actions whatsoever. So just like I skipped out on taking any actions in summer, the automa has decided to ignore the fall action spaces and simply save all their workers for later use. So now I have all these options available to me. I could draw some additional wine order cards to give me some more things to work towards. I could harvest 1 field, but I have no fields planted. I could make up to 2 wine, taking grapes from my crush pad into my cellar over here. Again, I have no grapes. Or, and maybe I should do this, build 1 structure. So let's do that, because this horticulturalist is a one-time use thing, and I've got all these vines that need to be planted. So I'm going to take my normal worker over here, placing it on this action space, and I'm going to build 1 structure. And you'll see that I covered over a bonus icon, which means I gain 1 lira. Anytime you see one of these bonus icons, you can take the bonus or the action in either order. So if you were trying to build a structure and you were 1 lira short, you could go there, get the bonus lira, and then build the structure. In this case, because I started the game with lots of money, I do not have that problem. So I will just take 1 lira from the supply over here, and then I can build virtually any structure of my choice. And the structure I'm going to build is going to be the one that is required by all these vines over here, which is the trellis. And if I look at my player board over here, I can see that the trellis costs 2 lira. So I will pay 2 lira back into the bank and take my trellis from the side over here and place it on my board. I like to stand them up like this and cover over the cost as a reminder that that has been paid for. And that is that action. Now we move on to the next season because there are no further actions that I can take here. And I want to save this grande worker. So I will pass with my rooster on into winter. And as you see, there are no bonus spaces there, so I don't get anything. And we will flip over an automa card. And in winter, the automa is going to block off the fill 1 wine order action space. So after all that worrying, I could have used my grande worker earlier. But anyway, they still function as a standard worker. So I can place this grande worker over there. I will gain 1 lira automatically as the bonus. And then I will pay 4 lira to train another worker. So I send my grande worker, my foreman, out, and he goes and finds one of these lazy workers standing off to the side here. And he says, "Why are you standing around doing nothing? Come, you can come and put yourself to use." So I just paid a 5. Let's take a 1 change. And this worker now goes over here next to the worker that trained them. So they're not available until the beginning of the next year. So with that, we come to the end of the year. Now, before I do the final end of year wrap-up steps, let me just summarize some of the actions we did not take. So you've seen how the draw vine cards action works, letting us draw these vine cards, which give us grapes, which we can then plant in our vineyard. We can also give a tour to show some visitors around our vineyard. And by doing so, they will pay us a nominal fee, giving us 2 lira. We can also go here and build a structure, the same as the build a structure action I took in fall. And you'll see in fall, on the build a structure action, it is either build a structure or give a tour to gain 2 lira. So this is a second chance if you miss out on either of these spaces earlier in the year. And the final action in spring, which we haven't looked at yet, is place or move a star. The stars come back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where you can place your little star tokens, and these represent you extending your influence into the region of Tuscany, which is where this entire game is set. And so as you place a star in a region, you will immediately gain the bonus of that region, be it gaining a wine order card to gain some wine orders to strategize towards, or drawing other cards such as vine cards or visitor cards, or you can simply gain money. Then at the end of the game, whoever has the majority of their stars in each region will gain that number of points. In summer, our actions are to play these visitor cards that we can acquire as we play the game. We can plant a vine, taking one of our vine cards that we've gathered in earlier stages and planting up to 2 of them in your fields, so long as you have the prerequisite structures. We can also take this trade 1-for-1 action, which is unique to the Tuscany expansion, which allows you to trade any one of these icons for any other one. For instance, you can trade any 2 cards for 3 lira, 1 point, or 1 grape. Meaning you can take one of these glass beads and place it at a level 1 space in your crush pad, representing that you now have a level 1 red or white grape. And grapes is how you make wine, which is how you fill orders. The last one in summer is buy or sell 1 field. Now, you'll notice that there is this little arrow on the side over here. And then there is a lira value on the field itself. If you take this action, you will gain 1 point as the bonus, and then you may sell or buy one of your fields. So you start the game with all 3 fields face up. If you take that action, you can sell one of them, gain 7, 6, or 5 lira, and then you flip that card over, and you'll see it is now on the sold side. So that's a way that you can get a quick injection of cash at the start of the game to help you train workers and build structures and so on. Then later in the game, you can come to the same action space and you can buy that field back, paying 7 lira and flipping it back to its available side. In fall, we have the draw wine order card action, which the same as the draw vines card action allows you to draw up to 2 cards from this wine order deck. We have this harvest 1 field action, and you'll see the bonus over here is +1. That means that you can take that action a second time if you're able to. So if you had vines that you had planted in your field, which by the way, I wouldn't be able to do that. you see how these have got a value of 4 and 2. And this field has a value of 5. So the value on these cards cannot exceed the value of this field. So if I wanted to have these two vines in the same field, they would have to go into this 6 or this 7 field. So if I had these planted over here, I'd be able to take this harvest 1 field action and harvest a level 6 white grape. Because when you harvest, you combine the values of the same color. So I would take a little glass bead off from the side, and I would put a level 6 grape in my crush pad. We can also, in fall, make up to 2 wine tokens. To make a wine token, and again, you will see that there's this +1 action, meaning you can actually make 1 additional wine token, so up to 3, if you're the first player there. And when you make wine tokens, you will take any grapes you have in your crush pads that you have harvested from fields, and you will convert those into wine. So you can simply do a 1-to-1 conversion. You can take a level 1 white grape and turn it into a level 1 wine, or you may combine your wines together. So to make a blush or a sparkling wine, you can combine a red and a white together, at which point you'll take their total value. So if I had a 2 and a 2, I would take those 2 grapes and I would make a single wine token of level 4 on the blush track. But you will see over here that this is a medium cellar, this is a small cellar, and this is a large cellar. And they've got these 3 doors. So in order to hold a level 4 blush red or white wine, I have to have a medium cellar, which costs 4 lira to build. So as you'll see, if you want to fill these more expensive orders, like this level 6 red wine order over here, you have to have a medium cellar. In order to do so, you have to go take the build 1 structure action, pay your 4 lira, and then you can take your medium cellar building and place it on your board, representing that you have now unlocked the ability to store wine for a longer time. So we'll put that back there, we'll put that back there. Lastly, in fall, we have this build 1 structure or give a wine tour action, which we have already explained. Moving on to winter, you can place a worker over here to gain 1 lira and play one of your winter visitor cards. And these are similar to the summer visitor cards. They will give you a special bonus. And the winter visitor cards are usually a little bit more advanced. They usually require more things to be in place for them to be effective. You can also train workers. You can sell 1 wine token. So instead of trying to fill a specific order, you could instead take just a single wine token. So let's say you had a level 3 red wine over there. You could sell that level 3 red wine for 1 point, or a blush for 2 points, or a sparkling for 4 points, irrelevant of the value of that wine. And sparkling wines are particularly tricky because they require 2 red and 1 white in order to make them, and you have to have your large cellar built before you can store any sparkling wines. So it's usually better to try and fulfill these wine orders instead of doing this. You will see on this action space that there's this little orange plus icon. That orange icon is unique to the Tuscany expansion, and it represents drawing one of these structure cards. These structure cards are additional structures that you can build over and above your standard structures on this board, and you'll see that I've got this little extension board off to the side here, with these 2 spaces available. So when you draw one of these cards, you would simply draw it and it gets added into your hand. And then later during the game, you can take the build 1 structure action, either there or there, and build this structure instead of one of these, placing it onto your player board over here. And you have room for 2 of these. These will mostly give you additional worker placement spaces, and some of them will give you additional bonuses. And the cost to build them is this number up in the top left-hand corner. So we'll just discard that over to there. And the last action in the winter phase is to fill one wine order, which, if you have the requisite wines in your cellar, you can hand in one of these wine order cards. You will gain immediately the number of points at the bottom, and you will move your little wine bottle marker one step onto this residual income track. And this is a way that you will gain a little trickle of income at the end of each round. And lastly, the final action space that we can take is over here. This action space is available at all times. Any number of workers can be placed here. And you can either gain 1 lira or gain 1 structure card. Before we dive into the next year, we do a final end of year cleanup step, which is most conveniently printed for us on the board over here. Step 1, we retrieve all our workers and everyone comes home. I now have that 4th worker that I trained available to use. Place those in my available workers space. And we'll retrieve all these Automa workers, putting them back off to the side over there. The next step is we will age grapes and wine tokens. So any grapes or wine tokens we had here, we would move up 1 step from a level 1 to 2, 2 to 3, etc. We must now discard down to 7 cards. So we count our cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm just okay over there. If I had any more cards, I'd have to discard them, not getting any of their benefits. The next step is to collect any residual payments. So if we have filled wine orders and we've moved our little bottle marker on this track, we would collect that amount of lira. And finally, at the end of the year / beginning of the next year, we now take our roosters and we choose our wake-up order. And I think I will place it down here at the bottom of the track. You will see this little grey worker pawn lying down over here. That is a temporary worker that you can get for a single year, which can really help to gain that additional labor force to get out there and do more actions to help kickstart your engine. I will take this glass bead and add it to the supply over here. And now that I've explained what all these actions are, let me explain how these glass beads help you in the solo game. As you can see, I've got 2 of these here now. So once per turn, each time I place a worker pawn on an action space, I can discard one of these glass beads and gain any bonus from that action space, even bonuses that aren't otherwise available to me. So I could place a worker over here, for instance, discard this bead and get 1 additional lira. So that's basically, it's just a tiny little element to help give you some extra action possibilities in the solo mode, because of the fact that in the solo game you are restricted to the 7-round limit, in which time you have to get up to 26 or more points. Whereas in a standard game of Viticulture, it is simply a race to 25 points. So in a normal game, if everyone is taking their time and building up their system and buying lots of structures, they're not actually gaining lots of points. The game can go on for many, many more than 7 rounds. But in the solo game, you have to be much more efficient because you've got that limited ticking clock. So now that I have chosen my wake-up order, we are starting off in spring in year 2, and we will flip over the Automa card and see what they block off. And the Automa is once again going to give a tour to gain 2 lira. As you will see, they don't actually gain anything, they simply block that action space from me being able to do it. So looking at my options here, I would like to build a couple structures, but as you can see, I only have 3 lira, which is not nearly enough to build anything particularly useful. So I'm going to skip over any spring actions and move my rooster over into summer, at which point I now gain this additional temporary worker into my supply. We will now flip over the automa card, and the automa is going to block off the buy, sell, one field action space. Well, that's not too bad, although that would be quite a good way to get that additional income I need to build a structure. But let us now plant some vines. So let's use this neutral worker. We'll place it over here, covering over that bonus action, so I can plant 2 vines. And I can now take these 2 vines over here, because I have the trellis structure required by them. And I can plant these anywhere. So I can plant them both in the same field, or I can plant them in 2 separate fields. And looking at this over here, I need 2 different white wines. So I probably want to plant these in 2 separate fields. And I will plant them both in my level 5 and my level 6 fields. Let's, come on, straighten out. And then I'm going to take another worker, placing it over here into this play a summer visitor action space. And I covered over that bonus, so I will gain 1 lira. Grab the thing, pop it there. And then play my horticulturalist action, allowing me to plant 1 vine without the requisite structures. So I can take this Chardonnay vine, which requires that I have built my irrigation, and instead plant this vine straight away. And I will plant this level 4 vine in my level 7 vineyard over here. So now I have vines planted in all my fields. Let's see, I could go and do a trade, but I'm not going to right now. I'm going to pass on into fall, which covers up this little gray bonus icon, which allows me to draw any 1 card. So let me draw, I will draw one of these winter visitor cards, because I haven't got any of those yet, and it could come in quite handy having one available to me later. So let's see, I got an innkeeper. As you play this card, put the top card of 2 different discard piles into your hand. So that could be quite useful, allowing me to play that innkeeper and retrieve 2 cards from discard piles. So I could retrieve this horticulturalist and play that again later on. What I should do, having seen that card, is take this card that I discarded for demonstration purposes and bury it under the deck there, because technically we haven't discarded any cards from that deck yet. The next step is to flip over the automa card for fall and see what they do. And you'll see here, this is a Tuscany specific action space that they will block, which is the build 1 structure or give a tour action space, which is rather annoying because now I can't build that structure I was hoping to. So now in fall, let me take one of these standard workers and I will harvest 1 field. But because I'm placing it on the bonus space, I can harvest 2 fields instead. And I will harvest these 2 fields here, giving me a level 2 white, which I take a little bead and I place it on a level 2 grape over there, a level 1 white grape, and a level 1 red grape. And I now have grapes which I can convert into wine later, which I will do straight away. I'm going to take one of these workers and place it over here, making up to 2 wine tokens. And I can make up to 3, in fact, because there's the bonus plus 1. Covering that up. And I can now make up to 2 wine tokens, so I can take these grapes and I can convert them into wine. So I'll take this level 2 and this level 1 white, and I will convert them into a level 2 and a level 1 white wine. And I can, so I might as well, take this level 1 red grape and convert it into a level 1 red wine, which will take a very long time to age up to 6 for that order. So I probably want to try get some different orders in my hand. So now I have a choice to make. I can take this final worker of mine and place it here to get some more wine orders, giving me some more options for possibly some easier orders that need to be filled. Or I hold on to it and I come over here later to pay some money and train an additional worker, giving myself more workers with which to use. Decisions. Let's see, I am rather tight on money, so training another worker might not be the best idea. I should probably save that money rather for building structures, because I'm going to need that medium cellar in order to be able to fill this order. So I will take this final worker, placing it over there and drawing 2 wine order cards. What do we get? We get a level 3 and a level 3, and we get a level 3 white and a level 7 blush. Well, that's a tricky one to get because I need to now start combining things. But as you can see, I now have more options for the wine orders that I need to fill. And that would be the end of the season. I will now advance my rooster token into winter because I have no workers left to do anything with. And I'll pick up this little grape token. What this means is I must, at the beginning of the next season, place my rooster up here in the first player space. So by taking this last player space, you are getting a lot of additional bonuses, and you are guaranteeing that you are the first player in the wake-up order for the next year. But you'll see that this first player space doesn't give you any bonuses. So it's an interesting payoff. You get a lot of stuff here, but then very little in your next round. And you simply take this to remind you, and anyone else at the table, if you're playing a multiplayer game, that you will be going first in the wake-up order at the next season. So now we would block off any actions in winter with the Automa card. They will block off the sell 1 wine token space. I have no workers left to take any actions in winter, so I pass. And we now retrieve all workers off the board. Everyone comes home. This grey worker goes back onto its space over there. These white workers go back to the Automa. And then we age our grapes and wine tokens, moving our wine tokens all up 1 level. And as you can see now, I really want to get that medium cellar built because next season when these age, they'll age to exactly what I need for this wine order, but they won't be able to if I don't have that medium cellar to hold them. They will simply stall there. We will now check to discard down to 7 cards. So counting them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do not have more than 7, so I don't have to discard any. We will collect any residual payments, of which I get none because I still haven't filled any orders. And we will pick up our rooster and choose our wake-up order. As I explained just now, I have to take my rooster and place it in this first space over here, taking this little bead and putting it over there, and I take these grapes and I put them back down at the bottom here now. So if anyone else were to claim this 7 space, they would have to take that and they would be the first player next round. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I think that gives you a pretty good idea of how Viticulture plays. And one thing you may notice is I still have 0 points over here. And Viticulture is what is referred to commonly as an engine building game. So a lot of the game is spent building up your engine. You're getting your infrastructure together, putting all your things in place. But then once you've built that engine and once you've started it running, that's when the points start to really ramp up. So for instance, you can see I've got these couple vines planted in my fields here. And that took quite a lot of worker placement and planning to get those planted. Now that they're planted there, it's very quick to harvest grapes from them and convert that to wine. And once you start filling some of these orders, in fact, let me just pick these up and put them over here for you. So you'll see, once you start filling these orders, they can give you up to 5 points at a time. And they also increase your residual income. So you'll be gaining more income at the beginning of every single year. So once you've filled one or two of these and you're up on that income track, and once you've got a bunch of vines going and you're harvesting them and cycling them through, you'll find that very quickly in a couple rounds, you'll go from 0 points to 25 points very, very quickly. But I think for today, I've given you a quick overview of all the various action spaces you can take. You've seen how the solo mode specifically works with this time tracker on the side here and the automa deck. And with that all said, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show.